Well, I mean...
And for him to compare it to a poll saying it doesn't matter where it is at any given point, of course it matters.
Well, it matters, I think in the short run I would agree the market's going to fluctuate. And just because the market is going down, that in of itself doesn't mean that Obama's doing the wrong thing. Just like if the market was rallying now, that wouldn't validate what he's trying to do.
Well, they're crowing on Capitol Hill because of the 350-point uptick yesterday.
But it's not them, and the downturn wasn't them either. What is them is the lack of confidence coming out of Washington. We cannot by any stretch point our finger at Obama and say it's his fault we're in a bear market. But we can point our finger at the administration and say, you've given us no guidance, we have no plan. Every time you speak, the market goes down further. People are confused. And the fact that you belittled my 401k the other day and said I shouldn't be looking at the stock market makes me even more mad.
But the same thing happened when Bush spoke. And remember, they're saying the same thing. It's the same message, just a different message.
But they
Can I tell you what the message is? I think the message is a four-letter word. F-E-A-R. Bush used fear to scare the civil liberties out of us, to talk the Congress into enacting the Patriot Act and other horrific assaults on the Constitution. And Obama is using fear to talk the Congress into enacting horrific assaults on the free market. And the argument is the same. The enemy's right there. The enemy's around the corner. The enemy's down the street. I need this power now. There isn't even time for debate.
There are striking similarities between Bush and Obama because they both come to office in the aftermath of a bursting of an asset bubble. They both take office at the onset of a recession. And they're both doing the exact same thing. Expanding government, running up the deficits, cranking up the printing presses, and attacking the free market and trying to claim government as the solution.
Lew, what would you expect from the government? No, not what would you expect. What would you like from the government which would address Tracy's concern about consumer and investor confidence?
Well, I think I always remember when Murray Rothbard said that nobody's heard of the Great Depression of 1920-21.
Right.
And that's because even though it was a very steep drop after the inflationary bubble that the Fed had created during World War I burst, the government did nothing. Warren Harding, who I think was not such a bad guy, did nothing. Congress did nothing. Even the Federal Reserve did nothing. And we came out of it very, very quickly. So that's what I would have liked to have seen this time. Bush and Greenspan created the crisis. Obama, instead of course, doing nothing, is making everything worse. So I'd like Obama and the rest of the government to go to the Bahamas for a while. That would be the best thing for confidence in the market.
Well, they got to take
Get out of here and stop attacking us.
Did you read, I'm sure you did, and probably went to your cardiologist afterwards, did you read Greenspan's, I thought it was going to be a mea culpa, but it wasn't. It was a defense of himself in this morning's Wall Street Journal.
I always remember that Ayn Rand called Greenspan the Undertaker, and of course he's turned out to be the Undertaker of the American economy. But I thought that I was very encouraged by that article in the Wall Street Journal today because he felt the need to defend himself.
Right.
He felt he had to say, look, it wasn't me, it wasn't the Fed, it was those Asians loaning us too much money, or it's the Martians or something responsible for this crisis. Alan Greenspan, if any one person, we can pin all this economic disaster on any one person, it's Alan Greenspan. And rather than just riding high and collecting big speaking fees, he feels he has to defend himself. Good. He does have to defend himself. But, of course, he can't defend himself. He is guilty.
Tracy.
Agreed. Lew, this is Tracy Burns. I agree with you. I think he should have been the parent at the party and pulled the so-called punch bowl away, and because we got way too much debt, and it was because he lowered rates too low. My question to you, though, is don't you think that by not apologizing, but admitting that there were some flaws in his thinking, he would therefore transfer some trust and stability to Tim Geithner? All he had to do was say, look, we did a few things wrong. Tim Geithner's not going to do them going forward because nobody trusts this guy either now. There's no trust in the Fed whatsoever.
Gosh, I always be glad to see any of these guys tell the truth. I'm not expecting it, however.
No.
So I don't expect Greenspan to ever take any blame.
Yeah.
I don't expect Bernanke to ever take any blame. I don't expect Paulson to ever take any blame. In fact, when is any government official ever taking any blame?
No, when has the government ever made a mistake?
I always said if they had a playing card, a deck of playing cards for the economic crisis, that Alan Greenspan would be the ace of spades. And when I wrote my book, when I wrote Crash Proof, my introduction, the first thing is I quoted from Greenspan to use Greenspan to criticize himself. I mean, it was obvious. The reason I knew that we were going to have this crisis, the reason I understood the bubble, was I knew who was blowing it up. I could see what the Fed was doing, all the mistakes that the Fed was making. And if I can see those mistakes from a little office in Newport Beach, California, obviously Alan Greenspan saw the mistakes from Washington because he was the one that was creating them.
But the problem is he knew this was going to happen. Greenspan was told, he had very smart economists sitting around him saying personal debt is going to get out of control.
Tighten it.
You know, I actually don't think he knew it was going to happen. I think these guys are so arrogant and so full of themselves.
Well, then he didn't hear it. He didn't hear it.
Believers in their own power, do they actually think they can, you know, they're masters of the universe? They really do believe that.
If you look at a lot
that's part of the problem, of course.
Yeah, well, if you look at a lot of the old, speeches or testimonies that Greenspan used to give, he always talked about the fact that eventually the chickens were going to come home to roost. He would talk about the fact that we can't keep running up these deficits. We can't have all these unfunded liabilities. He talked about the counterparties and derivatives. He said eventually there's going to be a big problem. He kept saying that. Now he can't just admit that eventually has finally arrived, and the big problems that he always warned about, yet did nothing about them, except warn about them. And he kept kind of deferring that, well, I'm just here doing what Congress wants me to do. I can't help it that you're running up these big deficits. I just have to fund them. What Greenspan could have done is he could have opposed some discipline. He could have refused to monetize the deficits. He could have refused to bring interest rates down and forced Congress to deal with a severe recession. Instead, he tried to help everybody get reelected, and that's what he succeeded there, but he failed for the country.
What do you expect, what kind of nefarious agreements do you expect Tim Geithner, Lew Rockwell, to enter into at the end of the week with the G20?
Well, I think Ron's right. I think that they would like, they want they think that they need a new world monetary system. Bretton Woods broke down. The fiat money system that was came in after Richard Nixon ended Bretton Woods in 1971, that's broken down. So I think there's going to be some new international monetary system, or at least we're going to see the beginnings of the plan. Whether it's going to involve a phony gold standard or something else, I don't know. But I think it's not going to be good news for the average American.
But what would be good is if we can actually go back to having a monetary system and actually use money for a change instead of the fiat that the governments are creating, because that goes to the root of our problems. If we had real money, we would have had discipline. We wouldn't have had these asset bubbles. We wouldn't have all this inflation.
Give us a 1-minute explanation of what fiat dollars are, what fiat money is, as opposed to real dollars.
Well, money has intrinsic value, whatever it is. Gold historically has functioned as money. Constitutionally, that's what's supposed to be money in America.
Right.
But gold has real value. It represents something tangible. When you just decide to abandon money and use a money substitute, such as dollars or euros or yen, they have no intrinsic value whatsoever. It's just a piece of paper. And the only thing that gives it value is confidence that the politicians are going to keep its supply scarce and that people will always accept it. But the minute the confidence is gone, there's no value left, and you get a run on the currency, you get hyperinflation. You don't have to worry about confidence when it comes to gold, because gold is what it is. It has real value in and of itself. It has nothing to do with anything mental.
But Peter's been talking this gold shtick for a while. I think for the average American who has a 401k at home, he doesn't want to go buy gold. He wants to know what's going to happen to his dollars.
Right.
And that's where...
Well, his dollars
aren't going to have any value.
Less and less because the government keeps borrowing.
And that's why we need them. But we need
Obama's not going to bail out his 401k.
No, we know that. John Tate from the Campaign for Liberty joins us now. John, welcome to Freedom Watch.
Oh, thank you, Judge. Good
to
talk to you again.
Now I can see your handsome face. Thanks for joining us. One of the issues that's going to come up in D.C., not far from where you are in the next couple of weeks, is General Motors is going to be back asking for more money. Make the argument that I wish members of Congress would listen to as to why General Motors' request for more money from the government should fall on deaf ears.
Well, it's pretty simple. I mean, we should allow the free market to work, and they're not going to bail out. I just heard part of that conversation. They're not going to bail out my 401k. Why should they bail out General Motors because of their failure to operate a good business?
If the very thing, if the very thing that you exist for the purpose of doing, here manufacturing an automobile, causes you to lose money, it is impossible to stay afloat unless you have some inexhaustible supply that is taken from somebody else by force. Does that